You ever have one of those moments where your life gets hijacked by someone else's power trip and you just know deep down it's about to get ugly? That was my Saturday. The sun blazing, my little backyard smelling like heaven with ribs on the grill, a cold soda in my hand, finally feeling like I'd earned a piece of the good life. My name's Marcus Tate, and all I wanted was to enjoy my new home, maybe melt into my lawn chair, let the world fade out for a while. But in this neighborhood, peace comes with a price, and it's usually collected by folks like Eleanor Price, the HOA president, who thinks she's the sheriff, judge, and executioner of Maple Hill Lane. I should have known something was up the minute I heard her heels crunching through my grass. No apology, not even a hello, just that look on her face like she'd caught me robbing the place. There she stood, in this blinding pink suit that probably cost more than my mortgage payment, sunglasses so big they belonged in a sci-fi movie, waving a clipboard at me like a traffic cop. "You," she hissed, her finger jabbing at my chest like I was some sort of roach. "You're a disgrace to this community." Now, you ever get accused of something so out there it takes a second just to process? I just kept chewing my ribs, staring up at her, half wondering if I was on some hidden camera show. "Is there a problem, ma'am?" I asked, keeping my voice calm, trying not to laugh. That seemed to make her madder. "A problem? Your pathetic little barbecue. That's the problem. My grandkids are visiting and they need a pool." "Where's your pool?" I almost choked right there. My yard was a patch of grass and a grill. No pool, never had one, never planned to. I told her that, but she just kept right on jabbing her finger at the sky, quoting some imaginary bylaw about how houses like mine have to maintain amenities for the community. She rattled that clipboard, nails clicking, talking about non-compliance and violating the spirit of the neighborhood. I'll admit, at first I thought maybe she was just having a bad day. But then I remembered the way she'd sneered at my old charcoal grill last week, called my home a blight, said people like me were lowering standards. Suddenly, it wasn't just a weird complaint, it was something meaner. I tried to be reasonable. "Ma'am, there's nothing in the bylaws about me building a pool. This is my yard, my property." She laughed in my face, a cold, glass-breaking sound, then said, "Property is a privilege, not a right. Your refusal to comply violates Section 17, subsection B, paragraph 6. You'll hear from our lawyer. We're suing you for emotional distress for the pool you owe us and for endangering this community." Then she spun around and stormed off, leaving me to wonder if I'd wandered into an episode of The Twilight Zone. 3 days later, there it was, a heavy envelope from the HOA, fancy letterhead, and all full of legal threats, and a grainy photo of my offending backyard stapled inside. It claimed I had 30 days to submit plans for a community-accessible pool or face $100 a day fines. I read the HOA handbook front to back. There was nothing in there about pools, especially not on my dime. This wasn't about rules. It was about Eleanor wanting to make an example out of me. The next escalation. Not a letter. This time, a knock on my door. I open it, and there's this county sheriff's deputy, all muscle and attitude, name tag gleaming, saying, "Evening. I'm Deputy Ramsey. My Aunt Eleanor just wants to make sure you know how things work around here." His words were syrupy, but his eyes were cold as steel. "She's had issues with you not being a team player. Property upkeep noise could become a criminal matter." Then, clear as day, he says, "Be easier if you just built the pool." That word "aunt" landed like a threat. She'd sent in her own family wearing a badge to rattle me. I stood my ground. "Are you here in any official capacity, officer? Is there a complaint?" He smirked, said it was just a community visit. I made a mental note of his patrol car and his badge, thanked him politely, and shut the door. His parting shot: "My aunt always gets what she wants. Let me know this was just the opening act. If there's one thing my job in government oversight taught me, it's to keep receipts." I scanned the HOA letter, made notes of every encounter, logged dates, times, everything. Good thing, too, because a week later I got served literally. The HOA was suing me for 10 grand, claiming I'd breached the community covenant by not installing a pool. They even wanted an injunction to keep me from altering my yard. I almost laughed, but there's nothing funny about being dragged into court over a pack of lies. Time to bring in the cavalry. I called James Carter, a civil litigator I knew from work, guys, a pit bull in a suit and lives for taking down bullies. When I told him the story, he just started laughing. "You're telling me she's suing you for not building a pool and making up bylaws to do it?" I sent him every scrap of evidence I had. He called me in for a meeting and laid it out. This isn't just a bad lawsuit, Marcus. This is a gift. We're going to bury them. James was thorough. He wrote a motion to dismiss attached. The real bylaws highlighted the fake ones. But he was more interested in something else. She's both president and treasurer. That's a red flag. I guarantee there's financial fraud in here somewhere. That set something off in my head. Maybe this wasn't just about me or the pool. Maybe she was using all this drama to cover something up. So I started digging. Spent 2 days at the county records office pulling every HOA filing since Eleanor took over. For years, the books were clean, then suddenly once she had the checkbook, everything turned murky. Round numbers for landscaping, big payments to contractors who didn't exist, even a few checks written to a P.O. box in her own name. It was classic fraud hiding in plain sight. Meanwhile, I fired off a few Freedom of Information Act requests, body cam footage from the Sheriff's Department, complaint logs, all of it. Quiet legal pressure, just enough to make people sweat. While I was building my case, Eleanor was building hers. She started a petition spreading rumors that I was going to build some hideous structure or let my yard rot and tank everyone's property values. She called an emergency HOA meeting at her house, barred me from attending, and painted me as a threat. Her cousin, the deputy, stood by the door like some kind of bouncer. But not everyone bought it, Sarah. My neighbor across the fence whispered to me that Eleanor had been pulling these stunts for years, threatening people, fining them for fake violations, sending Ramsey to knock on doors. My case was just her boldest move yet. But then Eleanor got sloppy. One night I was grilling, music turned low, and suddenly 2 city police cars screeched up, lights flashing. We got a call about a disturbance, the officer said, eyeing my backyard. I was alone listening to Miles Davis. From her porch, Eleanor was watching, arms folded. I explained calmly that this was a malicious call, that she was suing me and had sent her nephew to harass me. I filed a complaint right there for misuse of emergency services, and the officers seemed to get it. They logged my complaint and actually warned her about making false reports. That was her mistake. Now there was a paper trail, a record of her targeting me, and then thanks to Discovery, we got access to the HOA's financials. What James found was jaw-dropping. Eleanor had stolen over $85,000 from the HOA, using fake companies, writing checks to herself, even paying for cruises and handbags with HOA money. She'd been paying Ramsey for security consulting, basically bribing him to scare residents. The pool lawsuit. Just a distraction. She figured a new homeowner with a government background was the one person who might actually catch her. James compiled binders of evidence and sent a letter to every homeowner on the street, inviting them to a meeting at the local hotel. Eleanor lost her mind, sending out a frantic email calling me a forger and a criminal, but by then people were asking questions. The night of the meeting, 60 neighbors showed up. Eleanor stormed in with Ramsey at her side, but this time she couldn't control the room. James projected the bank records, the fake bylaw, every ugly detail. Gasps turned to shouts. Sarah stood up and called for a vote to remove Eleanor and audit the HOA. A detective stepped in, and just like that, Eleanor was arrested for embezzlement right there in front of everyone. Ramsey was led out by Internal Affairs. A process server handed Eleanor our counterclaim as she was cuffed, a little poetic justice for all the trouble she'd caused. In the end, Eleanor pled guilty, lost her position, and faced prison and restitution. Ramsey lost his job, his pension, and his reputation. Our settlement covered my costs, and I donated the rest to a fair housing nonprofit. Sarah became the new HOA president. No drama, just neighbors acting like neighbors again. That's all I wanted from the start. Now, when I sit in my backyard and listen to the sizzle of ribs, I don't just taste victory. I feel it deep down, like the universe finally set things right, if only for a moment. But sometimes I wonder, in neighborhoods like this, with folks like Eleanor, does justice ever really stick, or is it just waiting for the next new guy to move in? Let me know what you think. Down below, was I right to fight, or was there a better way? How do you handle injustice or bullies in your community? Drop a comment, because these stories, they're never really over.